This video will look at Victorian glee clubs and music halls as part of Leisure Unit 3 Theatre, Stage and Screen. So you're going to need to pause the video, do yourself a date and title, and your task today is to make a list of factors that influence your leisure time. So that's asking you, why do you do what you do for fun? And you could maybe think about the cost of an activity. So are you more likely to do something if it's cheaper? How accessible it is? Are you more likely to pick up a controller to play FIFA, or are you more likely to get on a train, go all the way to Liverpool and watch them play a match? Popularity? Are you going to sit down and play Ultimate Frisbee like I did as a child? Or are you going to, I don't know, play Fortnite or whatever kids are into these days? So pause the video, date, title and task. Now we have 3 key terms for you today that we are going to go through. So you're going to need to write these down. So a glee club is a society for singing upbeat part songs. This is very much an upper class tradition, and it's effectively a choir. That would be our comparison to today. You've also got music halls, which is basically a variety show. So I think of music halls like Britain's Got Talent. So you've got singing acts, dancing acts, comedy, acrobatics, novelty acts, balloon sculptors, things like that. And that's very, very much for the working class. Before we go any further, I'm just asking you what seems like a really basic question, but actually is going to feed in massively to what we are learning about today. My question to you is, why do people sing? And you'll notice I've got the late Sir Captain Tom and Michael Ball, who recently reached #1 during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Sir Captain Tom actually became the oldest man with a #1. But there's loads of reasons why people sing, and just don't fall for the obvious, it's entertaining. Like, you can be a bit more historical than that. So we'd like you to type this into the chat box, please. Give me any reason you think people might sing. Some of the ideas I came up with include it's free. I sing all the time when I'm in school, when I'm not doing these recorded videos. It doesn't cost me any money. Nostalgia, so we might sing songs from our childhood or things that remind us of a certain time. There are funny songs to make people laugh. You might sing to earn money if you're very good, unlike me. You might even do it to get famous. You might do it because you're talented. Or you might even do it while you work to keep the pace, things like that. You might have specific working songs. So to kind of set the scene and to introduce you to some of the visual aspects of this course, I'm showing you 3 pictures, just so you can imagine them. So the first one I'm showing you is a tavern. It's basically a pub. So you're thinking like wooden tables, loads of people crowded together, lit by candlelight, things like that. For your music halls, you're thinking big purpose-built buildings. They'll have a centre stage, but again, the music hall is for the working class. And then you've got your glee club, which again is for the upper classes and is effectively a choir. So just take a few seconds to look at those and just set the scene in your mind about what we're going to be reading about. So the Victorian music halls had their origins, so they began in the taverns and coffee houses of the 18th century, where men would meet to eat, drink and do business while performers sang songs encouraging the audience to join in. And by the early 19th century, so the 1800s, many taverns had designated or specific music rooms called song and supper rooms. No prizes for guessing what happened in a song and supper room. And the popularity of Saturday night sing-alongs led to performances being staged 2 to 3 times a week, which went on until the early hours of the morning. And the male audiences, because women were not allowed in, were often unruly and were known to throw abuse and even objects at performers. Okay? So this is how music halls began, and I'd just like you to summarise all of that information. You're going to need your key terms like tavern, song and supper, sing-alongs, and women not being allowed in. So the first purpose-built music hall appeared in Lambeth, London in 1852. It's the Canterbury Hall. It could accommodate 700 people, but is later rebuilt to increase capacity to 1,500 people. And this venture represented a new trend in entertainment as it was aimed at the working classes. And in a world governed by strict class and gender lines, the music halls had mass appeal. Women were encouraged to attend as it was thought they had a calming effect on the men. And Ladies' Thursdays were introduced, although some men, rather than take their wives, preferred to pay for the company of a woman. And as a result, the music hall soon acquired a bawdy reputation. That just means kind of rude, boisterous, quite sexualised. By 1875, there were 375 music halls in Greater London alone, and such was the demand for performers that it became common for women to perform. And songs from both men and women often had a nudge, nudge, wink, wink theme, which remained at the heart of the music hall. So that means kind of tongue-in-cheek innuendo. Speciality acts developed, such as jugglers, contortionists, trapeze artists, magicians, ventriloquists, sword swallowers, and drag acts. And upwards of 20 acts would perform in shows lasting up to 4 hours, with a chairman keeping control with a gavel, a bit like a hammer. The stars, though, were the singers, and men like Albert Chevalier and George Robey were hugely popular, but it was women who frequently topped the bill. Marie Lloyd became the queen of the music hall, and Vesta Tilley, a male impersonator, became a big star. Now, Marie Lloyd was actually so controversial, the BBC banned one of her songs once. Yeah, we don't go into that on this course. And most large towns had several music halls and at least one theatre. So theatres by the end of the 19th century were quite luxurious and were visited by middle-class visitors. And in contrast to the raunchy music halls, the theatres offered operettas and plays. Okay, so you are going to need to summarise what music halls were and who they were popular with and why. So you might just need to go back in the video 30 seconds or so just to get the previous information. Your scheme of work also wants you to know about one of the famous people that attended the music halls, which is George Robey. So as music halls became more popular, the main attraction for the audience was the entertainers rather than the food and drink. And the big stars were so successful that they would perform in numerous halls each night, crossing London in their carriages. By performing in several venues a night, the top stars could earn big money. They worked hard and lived fast, but the stresses of this lifestyle meant that many died young. Soon music halls were presenting shorter, twice-nightly programmes, and performers were now contracted for a period of time rather than by performance. and this meant that popular performers no longer had to dash across London to appear in several halls in one evening. And one of the biggest names in music hall life was George Robey, famous for the song The Simple Pimple, written in 1891. And he had a trademark look which is deliberately quite grotesque. So a black coat with a small collar and a white vicar's collar, a bald-headed wig, a reddened nose and cheeks, and arched black eyebrows like those of the great comic Dan Leno. So please pause the video and summarise each of those points just in a sentence. And now we move on to Glee Clubs, which is a more sophisticated form of entertainment. It began in the 17th century, so the 1600s, and Glee Clubs emerged in the 18th century, or the 1700s. A glee club was a musical or choral group historically made up of male voices, but also of female or mixed voices performing short songs, also known as glees. And they remained popular up until the mid-19th century and were gradually superseded or replaced by choral societies, so choirs. So pause the video and summarise Glee Clubs, please. Okay, so we're now asking you another question. Glee Clubs, theatre or a music hall? So which do you think would be the most popular for the upper classes? Which do you think would be the popular for the middle classes? And who was the music hall aimed at and why? So we're going to ask you to type this into the chat box for us, please, if you're on a live lesson, or on your notes if you are doing a Show My Homework lesson. And then your final task requires a bit of math skills. So you're going to create a night at the music hall, and you have a budget of £700, and you have to have at least 20 acts. So with your £700, you need to have a look at that table and work out a list of acts. So you must have at least 20. And you also need to think you're going to have 1,500 people attend. How much are you going to charge them? Because bear in mind, music halls are for the working class. And therefore, how much profit are you going to make? So you could kind of approach this two ways. You could maybe make the cheapest music hall performance possible to make more profit, but then you run the risk that people might not actually attend. So you've got to balance budget and entertainment. And again, just pop the amount of profit you've made in the chat box, please. It's probably going to take you about 10 minutes. Okay, and of course, as always, don't forget your beloved Show My Homework quiz 3 times. Bye!